It's right there. Welcome, everyone. Um, Thanks for joining us. Dropping into the middle of a laugh. Sorry about that as well. Uh, Glad you're here with us to share practice and dharma. Hmm. I'm just looking out the window here and seeing birds flying by, and the sutta reference tonight, which you'll find linked below in the YouTube recording, is called the hawk. And it's a Sakunagi Sutta, which means hawk. And it's one I've never read before. And I came across it today because I searched on Dharma Seed, not Dharma Seed, Access to Insight, ancestral home, because I heard a teacher saying something about the Buddha talking about our ancestral home, and I was like, "What? I haven't heard that. What sutta?" They didn't say, of course. Gah. And and so I went searching, and then I found this sutta and a few others that reference ancestral territory or one's ancestral home. Are exciting. So this is one of these, and it's quite interesting teaching. And it comes from, is it the Samyutta Nikaya, the collection of Dharma of teachings of Dharma talks that are specifically about the practice of not so much discourse about like philosophical things or other contemplations. It's really about practice, and mm, and so this one is as well. So this is a story about a quail, which is a smaller bird, and a hawk. And it's interesting they didn't call this sutta the quail. They called it the hawk. So it begins that once a hawk suddenly swooped down on a quail and seized it. So the hawk is a predator of the smaller bird, the quail. And the quail, as it's being carried off, is lamenting to itself and to the hawk, "Oh, just my bad luck and lack of merit, that I was wandering out of my proper range and into the territory of others. If only I had kept to my proper range today, to my own ancestral territory. Then this hawk would have been no match for me in battle. I would have been able to fend for myself and protect myself." And the hawk says, "Well, what is your ancestral territory?" The quail answers, "It's a newly plowed field that has clumps of earth." So you can picture the rows of being newly plowed and then the big clumps of earth uh, alongside the divots where it's been plowed, where the earth is all turned up. And the hawk is a little bit arrogant. Um, we come, okay, don't go there yet. The hawk is a little bit arrogant and says, "Even if you're in your own territory, I'll be able to catch you." A little bit bragging about it. And so the hawk, feeling so confident that he'll still be able to catch this quail, lets him go. "Go find your ancestral territory. I'll see you there," basically. And the quail goes and finds a freshly plowed field with clumps of earth, and is kind of taunting the hawk. Now come and get me, now come and get me. So the hawk tucks its wings in and dives down, heading straight. The quail is just standing there on this clump of earth, feeling quite confident in its own territory. And the hawk dive bombs down. And just when it's about to pounce on the quail standing on this lump jumps off into kind of the valley or the little off the heap, and the hawk plows into the heap of packed earth and doesn't fare well. Uh, so uh, the this is a simile, a story about what happens when one wanders into territory that is not our proper range. And it's like a cautionary tale about staying within our own ancestral territory, as it's phrased here. The sutta goes on then to explain more about what this means. It says, for this reason, you should not wander into what is not your proper range and is the territory of others, because in one who wanders into what is not their proper range, then Mara gains an opening. Mara gains a foothold. So in this story, the hawk is representing Mara. Mara, in many, many, many suttas, is a representative, an embodiment, a not an yeah, embodiment is right, a personification, that's what I want, of greed, hatred, and delusion. These are considered the three core or root. They're called kleshas or defilements that we all have to different degrees at different times, unless we're fully enlightened being. And Mara shows up many, many times in the teachings to the Buddha when he's practicing and basically tries to tempt him with, visions of delight and or images of warring and fighting. And yeah, so greed, hatred, and delusion, and tries to kind of seduce and lure the Buddha away from awakening back into samsara, into the rounds of rebirth and rebecoming. So the sutta is saying when we wander into what is not our ancestral home or territory, we're in a dangerous place where Mara can take hold, can get a foothold in our heart, body, mind. So then, of course, the question is, well, what is the proper range and territory? And so they answer it first in the negative. What is not the proper range? Where should I not be straying? The answer comes the 5 strands of sensuality, sometimes translated as cords. One commentary used the word strings. Yeah. So the 5, we'll say, strands of sensuality. What are these? These are the forms that are cognized or recognized by the eye sense door, the sounds cognized, known by the ear, the flavors by the tongue, sounds, I said sounds by the ear, smells would be, yeah, aromas by the nose, and tactile sensations cognized by the body. It goes on, that are agreeable, pleasing, charming, endearing, fostering desire and enticing. So the point here is not just that things are pleasant, either by touch, sight, smell, sound, taste. It's it's whether or not there's desire, clinging, attachment. That is the dangerous territory. Um, one of the, I'll put a link to this tricycle article that had some more commentary on this sutta, and the author, Peter Doobinin, Doobinin. Cool name, Doobinin. Cites this reference with regards to that it's not that things are beautiful or pleasurable. It's the passion, it's the grasping that is the danger. And he cites Angutta Nikaya 6.63. I've put the link down below for you. And where the Buddha says, it's the passion, not the beautiful sense pleasures found in the world. What's called this sensuality is the passion, and for one who is wise in this regard, beauties remain as they are in the world. Like, that's beautiful, that's lovely, that's pleasant, free of the clinging and grasping. So that is the improper range, not our own territory. When we get into the territory of clinging, grasping, which is the same as aversion, just the opposite side of the same coin, not wanting, then we're in dangerous territory. So then what is our ancestral territory? What is the proper range where we are not putting ourselves in danger of Mara's claws or the hawk? Your proper range, your own ancestral territory, where Mara gains no opening, gains no foothold, are the four foundations of mindfulness. Or as Bhikkhu Bodhi calls it, the four establishments of mindfulness, the four references, frames of references for mindfulness. So the four foundations of mindfulness are mindfulness of body, which is most prevalent, most prolific in the teachings. Mindfulness of what's called Vedana or feeling tone, mindfulness of mind, and mindfulness of mind objects or the dharmas. Um, can't go into explaining all four of those tonight, but to understand, it's the four foundations of mindfulness that are our ancestral territory as they're described here. And as you likely may know, mindfulness of body is the most accessible, most the first foundation of mindfulness. It's like the first establishment and is essential before one could explore mindfulness of mind, for instance, or the subtlety of Vedana. These are subtler practices for sure. Um, and that Peter Dubinin, apologies, Peter, if I'm saying it incorrectly, says in this article Our happiness, the Buddha teaches, depends on what we do with our minds. What and sometimes we lose sight of the truth that we have a choice where we apply our attention, where we redirect our attention, where we begin again. This takes intention and volition and energy to say, no, this is my territory, these four establishments of mindfulness. Um, and to actually see the danger. In some lineages, the dangers of are spoken about more clearly and more often, and sometimes in mindfulness or Theravada or Vipassana, not you don't hear quite as much. But this sutta really points out like that's dangerous to be just letting our all these sense doors wander wherever they please to roam out of present moment awareness. Um, yes, and how mm, how easy it is for the mind to become preoccupied with getting or not getting or getting rid of, and um, to be seduced in a way to that constant form of grasping. And how important it is to protect the sense doors. It's part of wise effort and wise action, um, especially when we have so much at our fingertips, phones and pads and desktops and tabletops and laptops. It's so absurd. Um, all these ways to just be so plugged in and be easily distracted into greed, hatred, and delusion. So that's something you might pay attention to. How much time and when do we reach to pick up some form of distraction? What's happening just before there? Was there some discomfort or something that needed attention and care and mindful turning towards? There's so much to explore around these addictions. Um, and and I'm with you on that. This sutta, this teaching is really also about what's called yoniso manasikara, meaning appropriate attention. Not the Buddha didn't just teach mindfulness, like just be mindful and do whatever you want. It's appropriate mindfulness, direct attending carefully to the right things, not just be mindful as you do any number of unskillful behaviors. It's about the mindfulness of sense restraint. Especially the eye sense door is particularly clingy, catchy, predominant in for most of us. Um, yeah, the other ones might be a little, well, hearing, touch, yeah, they're all in there. I think the eye is a particularly sticky sense door where we can easily get hooked. And how the hawk, which is the representation of Mara in the story, um, dies easily when one is in our own domain. We that yeah, in the story the hawk dies. I kind of was gentle around that part, but it hits the ground and dies. So representing greed, hatred, and delusion dying off when we are in our own ancestral domain of the four foundations of mindfulness. Let me just see if there's any other points about this that I want to bring in. I think that's it. As is said here, one doesn't let their awareness go wherever it pleases. We are proactive in our efforts to keep our attention on the breath or the body, and we'll talk about some body anchors. And there's an effort that is purposeful because we want to avoid suffering and we want to cultivate true happiness, sukha. The happiness that is not contingent on ephemeral sense pleasures that are impermanent and unsatisfactory, but cultivating the deeper, that's not the word I want to use, the true happiness that is not dependent on external pleasures. The mindfulness of body in the Dhammapada, number 299, it says, the Buddha says, they awaken, always wide awake, Gautama's disciples, meaning the Buddha, Gautama's disciples, whose mindfulness both day and night is constantly immersed in the body. So it's pointing out how mindfulness of body leads to awakening. That and the clear instruction here to cultivate as much mindfulness of body day and night, meaning constantly, continuity of awareness is the way to freedom. All right. That's enough. Yes, it is. So we're going to practice mindfulness of body practice. And there's lots of different practices in the first foundation of mindfulness, the mindfulness of body practice. The first is mindfulness of breathing. For many of us, that's an anchor that we use. For some people, practicing mindfulness of breathing creates more tension and more aggravation or stress or anxiety is not onward leading. So there's also just bare mindfulness of the posture that you're in, whether reclining, sitting, standing, walking. There's mindfulness of the movements of the body. There's mindfulness of the elements of the body. And well, we won't practice charnel ground contemplations tonight, but that's part of mindfulness of body. And body scan is another practice of mindfulness of body. And also, mindfulness of hearing is a mindfulness of body practice that can be helpful for people that feel more agitation with using the breath as an anchor, because it's kind of more spacious, but it's still the experience of vibration meeting the body that we call hearing. It's still the ear sense door. And then we just want to watch if there's clinging to, like, I like that sound. I wish that one would stop. Because then we're not in our territory. When it's known with mindfulness, then we're back in our ancestral territory. Um, so I'll try to limit it so it's not so many choices. Well, so you could choose hearing meditation if you're familiar with that, or just feeling the sensations of your hands where they're resting, or the breath. So I'll mention those when we go into the practice, which is now. All right. Oops. Have a quick drink of water before we start our practice. Good thing I muted that. That would have been noisy glugging of water. So silly tonight. My goodness. All right. Okay, let's settle in. Ah. So we begin by setting aside distractions. And as we're settling, we're really beginning this practice of landing here and now in the present moment with embodied awareness. So we'll start just by beginning to relax and settle into our posture. Taking time to lightly float awareness down through the body and noticing areas of tension, stress, contraction. Seeing if you can just bring some softness or spaciousness with and around those sensations. So there's a little bit of letting go or softening with it. Feel the muscles of the face, of the neck and throat, and across the shoulders. Sometimes it can be helpful to take a few slightly deeper breaths to feel some movement in the area of the chest, the belly, the ribs. Freeing up any tension or disconnect in these areas. The upper body begins to relax, begins and continues relaxing. We might then feel a bit more groundedness, heaviness, weightedness through the bones of the hips, the legs, the feet. As we begin and continue settling awareness through and around this whole field of the bodily sensations, we can also bring in the energy, the uprightness, the wakefulness of our sila, our ethics, these trainings that we undertake to refrain from causing harm to others through our speech and actions, to refrain from taking what is not freely given, to refrain from causing harm with our sensuality, as is described in this sutta about these, our sense doors and our sexuality, and to refrain from non-mindfulness or heedlessness from intoxicants, which again is very much a part of this sutta. So feel these interbeing contracts, these ethical commitments that energize you, strengthen your core, your uprightness. And now we continue developing Yoniso Manasikara, the directing our wise attention, appropriate attention, by choosing an anchor for the remainder of this practice. Tonight we're practicing with mindfulness of body anchors. So it could be just the sensations of your hands where they're resting, the sensations of texture and temperature, tingling, pulse, vibration, the touch of air, many, many different sensations in the hands that are changing, not under our control. They're just arising, passing sensations. And as was mentioned, if you're used to practicing with mindfulness of hearing as your anchor, you could use that. The other mindfulness of body anchor that many use is mindfulness of breathing. So whichever of these three anchors you've chosen, the mindfulness of body anchors, begin to really feel it as your ancestral territory, your ancestral home, being here with this first foundation of mindfulness. Feel the energy that comes, this, even if it's a sleepy time of day to be practicing, to really understand that when we just let the mind wander into thoughts of desire or aversion or delusion, that this is not our territory, that it is the place where Mara can have a foothold. And so we really want to turn up the brightness, the energy with your mindfulness of body anchor that you've chosen. This is your safe territory, your proper range. Being alert, we recognize the movement of the mind. And we bring in wise effort and intention to rest here. During his 45 years of teaching the Dharma, the Buddha was very clear that if we can keep the mind on the body, which is always in the present moment, we will find freedom from suffering and we will be able to know true happiness. feeling the safety of just abiding and resting right here. Reminding yourself you can choose what you pay attention to, and you begin over and over again. May any merits or benefits from our wise attention, our practice, our ethics be for the freedom and protection of all beings everywhere. And may we cultivate and remember our ancestral territory and the safety of that. Thank you for practicing with us. If you've joined us on the YouTube channel, check the links below to these suttas and also to the article, commentary article in Tricycle, and we hope to practice with you again another time. Now I'm going to practice mindful stopping here. Thanks for being here.